So let us begin. My name is Catherine Mayfield. I'm one of the sustainability champions at the University of Warwick, and joining me today to do the presentation are Rosemary Collier and Kelly Baker from the University, and Ian Jelley from the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust. So just to give you an overview of today's session, Kelly, Rosemary and I will talk about biodiversity strategy at the university and some of our projects on both the main and Wellesbourne campuses. Ian will then talk about some of the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust projects, and then there'll be an opportunity for a Q&A at the end. So for those of you who may not know the campus, the university has one of the largest university campuses in Europe, with over 150 buildings and covers more than 550,000 square metres. We have 7,500 student accommodation rooms, 3 conference centres, a sports hub, retail, cafe, restaurants on campus, as well as an arts centre. There are more than 27,000 students and nearly 7,000 academics, researchers and staff. From a biodiversity perspective, it is incredibly varied. We have woodlands, mature trees, hedgerows, lakes, ponds, brooks, meadows and open farmland, to name but a few of our habitats. So to set a bit of context from a biodiversity perspective, you may know that the university declared a climate emergency back in 2019. And since declaring that emergency, we've identified 5 pathways for our climate emergency response. 2 of these are related to carbon emissions, our scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions, which are those emissions we manage, but also those that happen because we exist. There's another pathway in terms of our contribution to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. 4th, in terms of embedding sustainability into the curriculum to ensure that students leave as responsible citizens for the future. And the final one is to achieve ecology and biodiversity net gain, which is what a large part of this presentation relates to. So a few years ago, we developed a campus master plan which looks through to 2030 and beyond, and this sets a blueprint for the future development of the campus. It commits to delivering projects which will result in biodiversity being better than before, and to looking at the campus holistically. In the past, we have sometimes looked in silos, really, in terms of biodiversity or in terms of projects on campus, and have not necessarily considered how biodiversity and wildlife may move through campus. So we're looking at it more holistically in terms of wildlife corridors and how they are all linked up both within the campus and also in the local area. The master plan and other university documents recognise the benefits of the environment and the green spaces that we have from a health and well-being perspective, for food production and also for carbon sequestration, so taking in carbon dioxide. A part of the master plan is a landscape and biodiversity strategy, and this has 4 key objectives: to safeguard our existing ecological assets. We have many on campus, to enhance our campus biodiversity on some of the green spaces that we already have, but also in areas that aren't necessarily green and biodiverse at present. To sustain and enhance the great crested newt population, which is recognised of importance within the county and the area, and also to encourage our site users to engage with the natural environment. Like I said, we've got 7,500 rooms on campus, and there's a lot of students on campus and in the local area, as well as the local community, who we want to encourage to enjoy the green spaces that we have, both for learning and for well-being. So since developing the master plan, we are in the final stages of finalising an ecology and biodiversity plan for the campus. We've worked with a consultant in order to do this, and it provides a framework and methodology for protecting, creating and enhancing habitats on species on campus. We've worked with them to develop an ecological baseline for the whole site, which is the first time we've had something as such, and had done a desktop study and site survey as part of this. We've identified habitats and species of particular importance, for example, our deciduous woodland, and also the bats, newts, badgers and some birds on campus which are of particular importance, and also identified statutory and non-statutory designations both on campus and in the local area. We are also identifying ecological assets that we will safeguard for the future. And these aren't just the large spaces of green, but they're also the corridors that link those spaces up. So ensuring that we consider the campus as a whole and not just isolated patches. So this plan that you can see is very high level, and I appreciate you can't see the detail, but it shows the existing campus plan as is today. And we also are developing plans that as is will hopefully look in 2030 and beyond. So the dark green are the woodlands and the swathe of trees on campus. The orange wildflower areas, and the lighter green are some of the amenity areas. Many of these, a large area of central campus is amenity, and we're looking to increase the biodiversity of central campus. So within the plan, we have got a large section in terms of creation and enhancement of habitats, and alongside that some management plans. So I'll just go through some of the opportunities that we've identified going forward. So like I said, we own large swathes of arable land, and we are looking to make sure that the field margins are becoming more diverse. So sowing seed, for example, for wild birds, and also wildflowers to create pollen and nectar sources for invertebrates. In terms of biodiversity, biodiverse planting on central campus, but also further afield, we're looking to increase the seasonal longevity of some of our planting to support wildlife and boost biodiversity for as much of the year as possible. We're very keen to add more hedgerows and woodland planting on campus to link up the habitats that we have. We're looking at more hedgerows along some of our roadsides, and then some larger areas of woodland planting, which we're currently finalising at present. In terms of wildflower meadows, we see two main options really. We're hoping to have some solar panel arrays from helping us to achieve our carbon emission reduction targets, and underneath these to have some wildflower meadows. And then we want just some individual standalone wildflower meadows that will link up to other areas, and these will be managed through reduced cutting and sowing more seeds and plug plants. There are a number of ponds and lakes on campus, and we are looking to increase the number of ponds and lakes for more of our pond life, and to create more habitats for the great crested newts. Some of the other things we want to do is some more fruiting and flowering trees, both for wildlife and for people, and to encourage people to pick the fruit that we have on campus. Also to create some swales and rain gardens to help manage the runoff on campus. And then finally looking at living walls and green roofs, which will benefit the scheme in many ways. The additional green infrastructure will make a more enjoyable experience for users of the space, alongside improving air quality and increasing local biodiversity. So moving on to recent biodiversity projects, assuming Kelly's there, if you could take over.
Yeah, sure. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Kelly Baker. I'm the Grounds and Gardens Manager, and welcome to our presentation for Green Week. So we're working on several initiatives throughout the site, and these are coming to completion for projects that we've done over winter when we've got some time to do landscaping rather than doing maintenance. So we've done a huge amount of hedge laying, and for those that are not sure what that is, the bottom right hand picture there is an example of hedge laying, and what that does is it takes the hedge from being sort of thin and wispy and tall, and it creates a nice dense area for birds to hide in, to take shelter, for various different wildlife to nest and lay eggs, and on all sorts of different things from flora and fauna. And creates, you know, quite a diverse habitat very quickly. It's quite a skilled thing, and thankfully we've got somebody that used to do it for a living in his 20s. He's now been with us for 30 years. So we've done about 50 metres of hedge laying, and that's over the Cryfield Village area. So that's now completed. We've also done quite a bit of coppicing over the cricket mound. What that does is it extends the life of different species, so mainly hazel, and we can use that new growth that we're encouraging for more hedge laying and different natural wigwams, so we can do recycling. And again, coppicing have a very unique attraction for different wildlife, so that also helped to increase our biodiversity. We've got several bug hotels that we've installed across campus, so we've got some pretty colourful, funky ones at Westwood. I think one of the lads in the team is an avid football fan, and he's put the colours of his favourite football team on the different coloured palettes to spice them up a little bit, which won't stop the attraction of wildlife, but might put some of the students off. But just a bit of fun, really. What they are is just you can use pallets, stack them up, and then pack them in with straw, bamboo canes, anything where, again, insects, birds can come and nest and hide, and bees, and a variety of different wildlife again. So we've got those that have been installed in 3 different places across campus. So Westwood, back of physics building, and down at Cryfield compound, where we keep most of our machinery and equipment. We've also trialled some different mowing practices. So over at Heronbank, we left long strips of grass that wasn't mown, but we actually put some shapes into it. So we made a giant sun in a large area of lawn. So it showed that it was managed, but we still reduced the mowing by, I think, 60% in that area. And we had a lot of wildflowers that came up from that, so that was quite exciting to see what grew without mowing. And we're going to do some more of that as well. And then we've planted some fruit trees up at Gibbet Hill, and that was the memorial fruit trees. So they're just on the entrance of Gibbet Hill, and that's a variety of different fruit trees, and we're looking to do some more of that as well. Could we have the next slide, please? Thank you. So we're also just looking at large tree planting areas, and Catherine and I have had a meeting again about that this morning. We've started to identify some good pockets across campus that we can start to plant lots of trees over the next 5 to 10 years. We're already doing hedgerow planting, so we're just increasing that over at Cryfield Village again. The chaplaincy is going to have some hedging going in over the next few weeks, and sort of Cryfield generally as well. We're in the middle of replanting Arthur Vic for any of you that live over there or have walked through recently. That's Arthur Vic 1, 2 and 3 has been completely stripped out. We're looking to replant that up again in the next few weeks, and that's going to be mainly focused on plants that can really attract lots of wildlife, so bees and butterflies and insects. So that should be really exciting to watch how quickly wildlife can move into an area that doesn't have very much wildlife at the minute. We've got the art centre planting, so obviously the art centre is just being finished off at the minute. With the new development wing on there, if you like, and we've got a strip of area down the side that we're going to plant up, and that should be sort of late spring, hopefully in about sort of 6 weeks time, the latest. And again, that's all focused on biodiversity. We've got wildflower meadows at Westwood that are going in, huge swathes of colour that are planned to again be seeded in the next few weeks. And we are looking at the lakes at the back of Bluebell mainly, the 2 big lakes down there, and we're just starting to lose the definition of those from mainly all the geese in there sort of eating the side. So we're just looking at reinforcing those to extend their lifespan, and by doing that we'll have gabions that go in, but also lots of plants for the ducks to eat, and again, bringing in areas for wildlife, such as little areas that the fish can swim to and hide in, and shelter as well. So lots of projects on the go, and also happening in the next few weeks there. And that's just what we're looking at the minute. That's it from me, Catherine. Thank you. Oh, sorry. This next slide as well. Engagement in green space. So, as you know, most of you know, it's really important to have those areas where we can, you know, interventions to sort of improve conditions where you can sit and you can enjoy. And also protect the wildlife and biodiversity, and we really want to sort of promote outdoor activities and active lifestyles and increase sort of social interaction. So by improving the biodiversity across campus and hopefully more enjoyment in what you see should be good for us, for our well-being and those that visit. And also the well-being of wildlife as well. We've got quite a few nature walks. You can just do a search on the internet for those, and there's several walks that you can do through campus, and it may be that you can explore some new areas that you've not seen before. And there's different points of interest throughout those. So one of the art trails, for example, the energy trails are quite widely used by members of the public and also students as well. We're just starting to collate surveys on different species. We're really keen to look for people also that could help us with that, support us with that. So what we don't have is we don't have any history really of what we've got. We'd like to start and start to collate history. So what birds are spotted, what butterflies, fox, and where they are on campus. And if you get in contact with us, we can give you a bit more information on how to do that. But we're really keen to get some engagement with those that use campus and what they spot, so we can start to log it and look at where we've got wildlife and what we've got, because information is key. Other areas of interest are things like the jam groves. So the jam grove is over at Westwood. There's about 3 borders over there that were planted up a couple of years ago now, and they are just focused on fruiting shrubs where you can collect the fruits and you can make jam out of it. I'm pretty sure that if you went and spoke to the team leader over there, cracking guy Andrew Woods, he'd be able to show you where those are and might be able to share some fruit with you as well, because there's plenty to go and not all of it gets used. We've got the allotment society, so students are quite keen to get stuck into that. So a small area where there's about 30 plots, and students gather on several days a month, where they can enjoy just being outside, being together, sharing skills and how to grow, and have an area where they can grow you know, a variety of fruit and vegetables. We also have different events. So we've got the BioBlitz, which is where we get outside, look at what needs to be done to help the environment, something that's quite straightforward, but all get together and do something active outside, have some fun outside as well, meet people, like-minded folk, learn about the environment, do something that's good for the environment. So you'll see those advertised through Catherine. And tree planting, we're looking at future projects where we can get different groups of people involved in helping to support the university with the tree planting initiatives that we've got coming up over the next few years. So if you're interested in that as well, Catherine will be looking to promote that in the future.
Thank you very much, Kelly.
My pleasure.
So just to finish with student projects, we are very keen to work with students as much as possible to use the campus as a living laboratory. And I'm pleased to say that we've got 3 students actually under Rosemary's supervision who will be looking at developing a baseline for us in terms of biodiversity net gain, the benefits of green spaces for wellbeing in terms of what it actually offers to people and how we can measure whether we've improved or not, and also natural capital of the campus. So it'd be interesting to see what the students find out for us and how we can improve. So talking of Rosemary, handing over to Rosemary to talk about the Wellesbourne campus next.
Thanks, Catherine. Hello, everybody. I'm Rosemary Collier. I'm an academic in life sciences. I'm based on the Wellesbourne campus. So for those of you who don't know about the Wellesbourne campus, it's almost 200 hectares in size. It's mainly arable crops and field trials run by the School of Life Sciences and several companies based on site. It's about 15 miles south of the main campus, and the facilities include also laboratories and greenhouses and obviously offices as well. It's been a research site since 1949, when it was taken on as the National Vegetable Research Station, and a lot of the focus of the research there has been on vegetables. And our natural assets include great crested newts, corn buntings and brown hares. Next, please. So we were really lucky to be asked to join the Arden Farm Wildlife Network at Wellesbourne. And this is a group of farmers, local farmers, who share best practice about managing their farms for wildlife. And it's coordinated by the Warwickshire Wildlife Trust and by an independent agricultural advisor, Zoe Bell. And I understand that there are now 37 farms covering over 9,500 hectares, and that includes the Wellesbourne campus. And the network has recently been awarded funding from Severn Trent's Boost for Biodiversity grant scheme to support a project to provide habitat for tree sparrows, which used to occur in the area, but recently seem to have disappeared. And the funding is helping to create over 11 hectares of wild birdseed habitat and 5.5 hectares of pollen and nectar flowers on farms across the area. Slide, please, Catherine. So at Wellesbourne, in terms of the tree sparrow project, then we've been feeding the birds from December, and we'll carry on until May with birdseed, which is spread around on a very long track. That's 3 times a week. And then we've planted up some areas for wildlife. They were planted in 2020. So that includes an area of pollen and nectar mix, and then a larger area of winter seed mix for birds. And then we've also put up 10 nest boxes, which are in close proximity to each other, so groups on individual trees and then on nearby trees. And that's because the sparrows like to live in colonies. Next slide, please. And then other activities that we've undertaken as part of the network. We were given a new barn owl nesting box, which we put up on one of the trees. And very recently, we've planted nearly 2,000 hedgerow trees as 2 hedges. And that's to improve biodiversity and provide corridors for all sorts of wildlife. Next slide, please. And just to flag up, as Catherine implied, that the School of Life Sciences supports student projects on ecological topics on both of the campuses, and these can be undergraduate projects or master's projects. We've got a few going on this year. So I'll stop there. Thanks, Catherine.
Thank you, Rosemary, very much for sharing. I will now stop sharing and hand over the reins to Ian, who will talk about the Wildlife Trust.
Thank you, Catherine. Let me just get my presentation up. Okay, hopefully everybody can see that. Thank you first for inviting me to come and speak today. I should start by saying how impressed I am by what the university is doing. That is amazing stuff, and makes me want to go back to university, to be honest, because when I was at university, our university didn't operate like that. So hats off to Warwick Uni for everything that you've done so far, and we're very excited about the future, working in partnership with you, and there's a lot to do, and there's a lot of exciting things in the pipeline. So I'm going to talk about those for sort of the next 20 minutes or so. The starting point for us really is to look back. So Warwickshire Wildlife Trust was formed back in 1970, and since then we have achieved an awful lot. So we now manage a range of sites across the county. We provide advice to lots of farmers and landowners, as Rosemary touched on. We're doing a lot of environmental education work. As a charity, we try and give a voice to nature and enable it to have a voice when other people are making decisions. And we work in partnership with other organisations that have a lot more influence than us, central government and local and regional government. And of course, we're supported by lots of volunteers and members who support our work. But despite all of that, unfortunately, in the wider landscape, wildlife has been in decline. And if you don't know much about that, then essentially any graph you look at goes like that. Whether it be for an individual species or for a whole range of species, wildlife is in decline across the globe. And the UK is now regarded as one of the most nature depleted countries on Earth, which is a rather depressing stat. The image on the right hand side shows like the perfect storm of things that impact on wildlife and drive the decline in wildlife over several decades. And I guess for us, the scary thing really is that climate change could be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of species. So climate change has the potential to undermine the base of the food chain, a lot of the species that perhaps not many people notice or know much about, but who themselves provide food for lots of other wildlife further up the food chain. So really trying to think about it holistically about how we try and tackle this is really important. Essentially, we're at a tipping point whereby over decades now, wildlife has been in decline and ecological decisions have not been integrated into the wider economy. And we now need to change that to address the balance before it's too late. Even for people that don't really care about wildlife, actually wildlife underpins everything that we do. Obviously, the natural environment provides clean air, clean water, and 1 in 3 mouthfuls of food that we eat is directly produced as a result of pollination by insects. So even if people are disconnected from nature, actually they rely on nature for their very existence. So what are the Wildlife Trust going to do about that? Well, we've been working a part of the federated structure of Wildlife Trusts around the UK to come up with an ambitious new strategy. So Warwickshire Wildlife Trust covers Warwickshire, Coventry and Solihull, and we're one of 46 wildlife trusts around the UK that are all separate independent charities but come together to form a collective when we need to speak on key issues. And our new strategy moving forward is going to be 30 by 30. So essentially what that is we are campaigning to try and safeguard 30% of the UK land area and 30% of the UK sea to provide a sanctuary for nature's recovery. That doesn't mean to say that 30% of the land has to be designated as a nature reserve. What it does mean is that 30% of the land should be trying to support nature's recovery by being managed sympathetically. So it'd be great to actually work with the university to work out just how much in an area of land you have already and whether there's opportunities to help you reach that target. Essentially, what we're saying is if we carry on the way we're going, wildlife and then the human race eventually is going to be in big trouble. Since 1970, when we were first formed, wildlife has been in broad decline in the landscape. And unfortunately, our approach of just managing nature reserves is not enough to reverse that decline. So we have really one of 3 options. We can either carry on managing those nature reserves and preserving like kind of museums, if you like, of the species that used to be found more widespread, or we can start to upscale our approach and try and do that, but as well start to be more ambitious in what we're doing by acquiring more land. But what we're actually going to be aiming for is be working in partnership, acquiring more land and maintaining our nature reserves to try and reverse or bend the curve, reverse the decline and set species on a pathway to recovery. So the first thing to think about when you're considering trying to reverse that decline is, well, where are we at now? Luckily in Warwickshire, we're in a really fortunate position because we've been able to map the habitats within the county across Warwickshire, Coventry and Solihull over the last 2 decades through a project we're running. So we know exactly where all the habitat is, what types of habitats are where, so where the ancient woodland is, where all the wetlands are, where the wildflower meadows are, but also where the arable farmland and the other areas are as well. And by doing that, we're able to work out the percentages of land that's already supporting nature's recovery, adding in things like farmers' environmental schemes, local authority land, council land, maybe parks and green spaces. And what that gives us is a total for each local authority area and then an area of the overall combined. And that shows that, roughly speaking, we're about 13%. Now, obviously, if we want to get to 30%, there's a long way to go for that. So how are we going to do that? Well, if we start with the problem at the bottom, the humanity at the moment is facing really 3 main issues that could undermine the whole global ecosystem, but also our very existence as a human population. We're facing an ecological crisis where wildlife is in decline, the health crisis, including the COVID crisis, but even before that, things like diabetes and obesity and other mental health issues were facing big challenges for our society. And then the climate crisis that is obviously growing in its significance and potentially undermining future opportunities. So all of those three things combine, but they're all intrinsically linked, and nature can play a part in the solution to all of those. And that fits in with our mission and enables us to deliver our outcomes as a charity to try and address some of those issues, hopefully then delivering 30 by 30. But really, we need to focus on what are we going to do differently moving forward. And that really is scaling up our impact and trying to increase the area that we directly influence. So starting actually at the end of this month, we're going to be launching a brand new fundraising appeal, a nature recovery fund, where we're going to be trying to raise money to acquire land at scale beyond what we've done before. That's going to feed into our work and enable us to create more habitat for wildlife and inspire others to play their part in nature's recovery and create some real examples of sort of showcasing how to do it. And our ambition is to try and double the area of land that we manage as a charity within the next 10 years by 2030. So recognising over the last 5 decades, we've managed to acquire about 1,000 hectares of nature. We want to try and double that within the next 10. So what we're going to be doing on the 30th of March, we are launching an ambitious fundraising appeal. It's our most ambitious fundraising appeal yet, and it embarks our most ambitious area of work yet. We've already secured £1.5 million, which is an amazing starting point. But if you ever Google how much does buying land cost, turns out it's quite a lot. And 1.5 million doesn't actually go that far when you're trying to buy land. So we're going to try and double that to achieve a kind of a war chest, if you like, of £3 million to enable us to create more land for nature, to bring wildlife back, to enable people to be closer to nature in their daily lives, and to enable nature to provide solutions to some of the challenges that we face. So where are we going to target? Well, obviously, if we were able to raise £3 million, then we need to identify land in a creative way, because we can't buy land everywhere, and £3 million certainly won't enable us to buy, say, 30% of the county. So what we're starting with is identifying where the hot spots for nature is at the moment, and where we can potentially grow those by increasing the overall area by acquiring land in the nearby vicinity. So this aerial image shows our Brandon Marsh Nature Reserve, which is down to the southeast of Coventry, near Coventry Airport. Now that's the area in pink with a red circle in the middle where our visitor centre is. Well worth a visit if you've not been. And the other areas of pink just to the north of that are some other sites that we also own. We're currently in discussions with Coventry City Council and Tarmac, the aggregates company, over the golf course highlighted in blue and the yellow field there highlighted in yellow, potentially looking to acquire those for nature conservation. The golf course has the River Avon running alongside it, and the River Avon floods across the golf course for about 3 or 4 months of the year. So it's not a very good golf course because you can't play on half of it. And it's no longer viable really as a kind of an operational business. So there's an opportunity there to potentially restore a golf course to nature. We're also looking at land on the open market. So this is a farm that's currently on sale down on the Rugby Stratford border. The red and the purple area on the image on the right hand side are 2 of our existing nature reserves, and the pink area is part of the farm that's available, and we're considering whether we should be making an offer to try and acquire that land. And then we're also looking at other parts of the county. So this is down in Leamington. The area outlined with a thin red line is our Lem Valley Nature Reserve and Welsh's Meadow. They're 2 of our existing nature reserves, and it's one of our bigger sites. And then we've identified there's 2 farms, one to the south in red and one to the north in pink, that we might want to have a conversation with the farmers over about whether they'd be interested in selling some of their land, or whether they could work with us to try and restore some of their land for nature to complement that area in the future. And then the land just to the sort of west of the large pink area is another golf course. This is Newbold Common, and we're currently talking to Warwick District Council about whether that could be restored for nature, because that's another golf course that unfortunately for the council is no longer viable in terms of a business entity. So there's loads of examples, and here's another example of Oakley Wood and the landowners around that, which we've identified that we're going to try and start to have discussions with over the next few years to see whether we can increase our land area and restore sites for nature. So that's the kind of the ambition, to buy land at scale and to start restoring habitats at scale, the likes of which we've not done before as a charity. we're confident we can achieve. But then we're also looking at our wider projects and delivery of how they can contribute to this 30 by 30 effort. The latest of which is the River Sherbourne Valley Living Landscape, which is a new scheme funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which runs through Coventry. So this is obviously a map of Coventry. The River Sherbourne starts up in the northwest, just above Cowden Wedge, flows through the large green space there, which is Cowden Wedge, on view through Lakeview Park and down towards the city centre. And then it actually goes underneath the ring road and right through the city centre. But in the city centre, it goes through a really big pipe. We're working with a range of different partners. So we're working with Severn Trent, the City Council, the Environment Agency, Citizen Housing, the City of Culture, of course, Historic Coventry and the Diocese of Coventry. All of these organisations have an interest in the river and an interest in the communities that live along the river. And they're already working together, but this scheme is enabling us to work together in a more effective, targeted way. So what are we going to be doing? Well, the scheme runs, when it's funded by the National Lottery, runs in 2 stages. So the first stage is a development phase, where you're typically given about 18 months to identify projects and work out what you'd like to do over a subsequent 4-year delivery phase. So we started back in November, and we're going to run through until about March, April next year with the development phase. And with that, we're going to be talking to people, getting ideas of what we could do to restore the river for wildlife, to help improve the connection of people with wildlife, and help to support and preserve the built heritage along the river. One of the challenges we face is that right in the city centre, it's completely devoid from view. So it goes through a big culvert, a big pipe that's big enough that you could drive a car through it. But as it's below ground and only exposed to a very short section right in the city centre, most people that walk through the city have got no idea that there's a river running beneath their feet. So it poses a real challenge for us in terms of trying to educate people about the river and to try and reduce the unintended consequences of things like pollution that may be happening when people just don't realise there's a river beneath the feet. There's a huge amount of built heritage assets along the river. Considering how much Coventry was bombed during the Second World War, the number of historical buildings that remain in some kind of form of disrepair or ruin, in some stages have been restored, but they really tell a story of the history of Coventry and why it was located where it was. The sky blue that the football team play in and that the council has as their logo was inspired by Coventry's River Sherbourne, because back in the day when they used to dye sheep's wool, the chemical properties of the River Sherbourne enabled that dye to be that unique blue colour, which has been adopted by the city ever since. The river faces a lot of challenges. So it goes through the culvert, obviously, which is a big challenge. There is a lot of litter and a lot of pollution. There are so many outfalls where pipes go directly from people's drains into the river and from the road, which can increase the amount of pollution and damage the water quality and wildlife. There's also problems with misconnections. So unfortunately, if you misconnect your toilet, as in you plumb your toilet into the wrong pipe, whatever you put down your toilet goes straight into the river rather than the sewage works, which is a big problem and something that we're going to try and help resolve, working in partnership with the council, Severn Trent and the Environment Agency. We're also keen to understand what happens in the culverted section, whether any wildlife uses that, whether it's a kind of a super highway for otters who have been found across the city now, whether there are freshwater invertebrates living down there, or because it's dark, whether any wildlife actually uses it at all. We've also got some challenges over the fact that it's been heavily modified. So a lot of rivers in the UK were straightened during the Industrial Revolution because that meant that the water flowed more fastly down the river, and they were able to put in weir systems and water wheels to generate the mills that then were used for industry. But by straightening the river, obviously you take out a lot of the natural characteristics and the variety of the river, which reduces the benefits for wildlife. And in the city, there are concrete sides to the river where not a lot of wildlife can live, and water voles can't nest, and there's no vegetation. So as I said, we're in a development phase now, running through to March, April next year, and then we'll be submitting a further application for a 4-year delivery phase from that point. And that's when the really exciting stuff happens. What we're going to be looking to do during that subsequent 4-year phase is to reprofile the river in some places, to put the wiggles back in and dig out the side of the banks. We're looking to install woody debris into the river, like the middle image, where you can recreate natural processes and put in gravel and other things that might help fish spawn and provide nesting material for freshwater invertebrates, and create an increased amount of wetland in the sort of the land surrounding the river. So looking at Lakeview Park and Sherbourne Valley allotments and other places that the river passes by to see whether we can increase the amount of natural habitat for wildlife. We're also, one of the most exciting things that we're looking to do up near Cowden Wedge on the North Brook is to do something called Stage 0 restoration, which essentially is where you take a river that has been heavily modified, like the image on the left-hand side there, and put into a channel, and you try and restore its natural processes by basically bunging it full of wood and debris and natural materials. And by bunging up the channel, you encourage the water to spill out over a wider landscape. And if you've got enough room to do that, you can create some really nice natural processes that create huge variety for different species, and are the sorts of areas that potentially future beaver introductions could be integrated into in the future, and using beavers and other species to try and re-establish natural processes. We're also looking at the weirs. So as I mentioned, weirs were installed during the industrial period to power the mills, but unfortunately these prevent fish from moving up and down the river effectively. So where possible, we're looking to bypass those or to modify the weir structure to enable water to flow more freely in the river channel. And then a big part of it is trying to interpret the river in the city centre. So I mentioned that it goes underneath the ground, and most people that walk through the city can't see it and are unaware it's there. So we're looking at a range of different opportunities, from temporary art like chalk artists on the floor, through to more permanent structures like seats or slabs on the ground that tell the story of the river beneath your feet. So look out for that sort of thing over the next few years. There's a lot of opportunity that we're working in partnership with the City of Culture to sort of magnify the impact of this area of work, because the City of Culture have recognised that the river can play a huge role in telling the story of Coventry as a city. We also want to try and embrace new technology. So we're looking at virtual reality and augmented reality to bring the river to the surface where we're not able to do so. So you can't lift the lid on the river everywhere because it goes under IKEA and the market and the ring road, which would disrupt people quite a lot if we tried to take the lid off. But what we can do is to create virtual reality or augmented reality experiences to help people understand that there is a river beneath their feet. And we hope that using technology like that will help reduce or increase people's perceptions of the natural environment and reduce their impact of it. We're also working with nature. So nature-based solutions is a key part of our work moving forward, and showing what nature can do as an alternative to perhaps more industrial engineering measures. And one form of that is through natural flood management. So we're working with the council and the Environment Agency up to the northwest of Coventry, in the area above Olesley. The idea here is that we're trying to slow the flow of the water within that landscape to reduce the flood risk to properties in Olesley. Olesley has suffered various flood events over the last sort of 2 decades. And what typically happens, if a raindrop falls anywhere in that blue image on the map, it finds its way to the river and eventually rushes down the hill. And the houses at the bottom of the hill can be inundated with water if too much rainfall falls in too much a short period of time. So our aim is to use the natural environment, work with farmers to help store some of that water up in the landscape, intercept it before it flows down the hill, slowing the flow and hopefully moving the curve. So a typical flood event will be very flashy, where a lot of rain happens, it flows down the hill really quickly and everyone gets wet. With natural flood interventions, management interventions, you can slow the flow of that water, reducing the peak of the curve and spreading out the amount of time it takes to move through the landscape. So I imagine you guys are sitting there all fired up now, thinking, what can I do? I want to get out there and change the world. And that's great. I hope you do. One way you can help us is by joining our Wilder Warwickshire programme. We are trying to inspire the next generation, reflecting again on the fact that we've been around for 50 years we've realised the importance of engaging young people in our work, and what we'd like to do is to try and encourage the next sort of generation of ambassadors, if you like, because we feel that 50 years ago some people came together to start our charity because they recognised how important it was to support the natural environment, and now 50 years on we face just as bigger challenges. So we've secured some funding from the National Lottery Heritage Fund to run a programme aimed at targeting young people. And the idea is that we deliver a range of different training programs based on topics that are suggested for and engaged with by young people, to teach you guys about the fundamental skills that you might need to be more aware of the natural environment. But these skills are also very transferable into any walk of life and can help build your confidence and communication and teamwork, and really be sort of part of your learning as part of your university. And the best bit is it's all free for you. So if you're interested in learning more, it'd be well worth looking at the website, following us on our social media channels, because we regularly talk about what we're doing across Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and it'd be well worth you sign up to those updates so you can see what's going on. That's a quick summary from me, and I'm now going to hand back to the guys at Warwick Uni.
Thank you very much. Interesting. Would anybody have any questions? You can either type them in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. Yes, Rosemary, hopefully you can speak.
Yep, I think I can. Yeah, that was great, Ian. Really interesting. I just wondered, apart from buying land, how much scope do you think you have with other landowners in terms of sort of increasing the area that will be managed for wildlife?
That's a great question. I think, as I said in the presentation, we can never expect, and we don't want to be able to manage 30% of Warwickshire on our own as a charity. We have to work in partnership with other landowners. And it was great to hear you talk about the Arden Farm Wildlife Network, which is one project we're already doing to try and engage landowners. We recognise that actually, agricultural land across the UK covers about 70% of the land area. So in order to really bring wildlife back at scale and to achieve our objectives for 30 by 30, we have to work with farmers. Farmers, are more than engaged with what we do, and it's brilliant to see actually the great work that farmers are doing on the ground. I think the challenges that farming have had over the decades and the impact that farming has had as an industry on wildlife has been largely policy led by UK government, driving the need for food production on our doorstep. And when farmers have been given opportunities to integrate natural environment processes into their farming practices, a lot of them have embraced that. But needing to balance their need for food production at the same time. And we can see a real opportunity with some of the stuff that's evolving out of the post-Brexit agriculture stuff, that farmers could be really supported, hopefully in the future, through UK policy to help bring wildlife back. So we're really keen to work with them. And it's great. I mean, looking through everything that university was achieving, I'd love to have some further follow-up conversations with you guys like I have in the past about how we can support you moving forward and to tell that story, because you're obviously doing an awful lot now off your own back, which is brilliant. And we're very keen to try and celebrate things like that, because not every business is switched on like that yet, and not every education facility. So actually being able to celebrate some of the great achievements that are happening in farming, but also with universities like yourselves, is really important, because hopefully that can inspire others.
Yeah, I would say that the 30 by 30 sounds fantastic, and something that I wonder whether as a university we could kind of sign up for doing within our campus. We're looking at setting targets for biodiversity net gain. There will be targets out of the Environment Act, but whether we can look to surpass those, and certainly we will be in touch to discuss what we can do together.
I would say just on the 30 by 30, the great thing about it is that it's so scalable. So, we're sort of trying to champion the idea that nationally we should be aiming for 30% of the land area to be supporting nature's recovery. But you can take that concept right down to your own, your own garden, your own window box, your own university grounds, your own farm, your own county. And that's the brilliant thing about it, is that everybody can think about what their influence and what they can do to try and support that, recognizing that, whoever we're talking to, they might have their own priorities and not be able to do everything. Everything isn't going to turn into a nature reserve, but 30% of the land hopefully should be achievable for a lot of people. And I think it sounds like you're well on the way to achieving that.
Hopefully so, yes. Thank you everybody very much for attending, for Ian and Rosemary and Kelly for your contributions, and we will all keep in touch and keep nurturing nature on campus and across the county. Thank you all very much and goodbye.
Thanks everybody, bye.
Thank you. Yes, thanks very much.